right, on a day the President of the United States is pushing Bidenomics and saying it's working, there's one key aspect of that with whom the governor of Georgia very much disagrees, and that is the president's push for electric vehicles and a federal policy that he says is over-the-top expensive and unnecessary. That governor, Brian Kemp, is with us now out of Atlanta. Governor, very good to see you again.
Hey, great to be on with you, Neil.
Let me ask you a little bit about, I know you don't like the president's EV policy, but you have been heralding, facilities, including one in your own state, that the White House claims is possible because of their federally backed funds, that those funds made this possible. What do you say?
Well, listen, Neil, we're making Georgia the e-mobility capital of the country, but this was happening long before the president's policy passed. The IRA passed, as you know. We had announced already dozens of projects related to the electric vehicle industry in Georgia, including the Rivian plant, the Hyundai plant. Even Governor Deal announced the SK battery plant in Commerce, Georgia, during the transition right before I became governor, and then Secretary Ross came down for an expansion for the groundbreaking, and then we did an expansion early in my administration. So my point on all of this is the market was already working here. What the Biden administration did in the Congress without Republican votes is manipulate the market, pick winners and losers, ended up hurting companies like Hyundai, Kia, and Rivian, and that's just not the way it should work. We ought to either have incentives that treat everybody fairly, or we shouldn't have them at all.
Governor, knowing that I would have you today, sir, I was interested. Fox has these power rankings that we released. They're fascinating, and they show some of the battleground states, yours not surprisingly among them, but that the odds favor Democrats right now in the 2024 election, up all the way to the presidency. Does that surprise you as things stand now?
Well, I haven't seen the power rankings. I can tell you that, I had a very successful 2022 re-elect against a very strong, well-funded, nationally backed candidate, Stacey Abrams, as you well know, won by almost 8 points because we told people what we were for. We stayed focused on the future, and we had candidates running in Georgia on our statewide ticket at the state level that could win, and we won every single one of them, even having libertarians in the race, and didn't end up having any runoffs. And I think that's the playbook for Republicans in 2024. We have to be forward-thinking. We don't need to be looking in the rearview mirror and talking about elections of the past or things that happened in the past. We need to be telling the American people and the people of this state what we're for, what we're going to do for them, what we're going to do to help combat Joe Biden's 40-year high inflation, his disaster at the border, high interest rates, and really government spending propping the economy up. And that's not going to last, as you know, Neil.
Well, you did win in a walk re-election, and you left out there, you're always a gentleman about it, but how much Donald Trump was betting and hoping that you would lose. In fact, he still cites you again and again, now even over the state's COVID handling a couple of years back. I will get into that, Governor, but the president's former chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, said that Republicans are in trouble in your state, among others. He mentioned battleground states like Arizona as well, potentially even Florida, because of his attacks on Republicans, that it's going to boomerang, hurt Republicans. What do you think?
Well, listen, I got attacked unmercifully in the primary and the general election and still won because I was a happy warrior and I stayed focused on what I think Georgians care about, having a good paying job, making sure that their kids are in the classroom, having a governor that's fighting every day, working with even the opposite party at the local level to keep their communities safe and to go after street gangs and violent criminals and do something about the drug cartels that are bringing fentanyl across the southern border, even when President Biden's administration will not do that. And that's a winning formula, but that's what we got to stay focused on. If we're talking about things that they don't care about, things that are in the past, either from 2022 or 2024, people have short-term memories. They're not worried about the past. They want to know what elected leaders are going to do for them in the future. That's what I stayed focused on in my re-election campaign, and I believe that Republican presidential candidates, if they'll do that in this election, they'll be very successful in states like Georgia.
So if Donald Trump were your party's nominee, forget about whether you would support him, do you think that would all but guarantee your state tips Democrat?
Well, I wouldn't want to say that he couldn't win Georgia. I think if he stayed focused on a positive message, talked about the good policies he did in the past, and told people what he was going to do in the future, I think there's a chance he could win Georgia. But if he stays focused on, you know, the election was stolen and things of 2 years ago, I think it's going to be a very tough road for him or any other Republican that's running.
But, you know, he can't let go when it comes to you, Governor. Not too long ago, he blasted you for your decision to reopen parts of Georgia's economy during the first weeks when everyone was locking down. Even the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, sometimes editorially no great friend of yours, cried foul on that, saying that the president was rewriting history. But how did you feel about that attack line?
Well, listen, that was a brutal 3 days. I remember it well. He attacked me on national television at press conferences 3 days in a row. You know, I told people he ran the bus over me the first day on Monday night, backed over me Tuesday night, ran me over again on Wednesday night. But listen, Neil, I wasn't listening to him. I wasn't listening to Fauci or Birx either. I was listening to our people. You know, I was listening to parents and small business people working Georgia and saying, hey, we're not going to sit in our basement and lose everything we got. And that's who I was fighting for. That's why I did not waver. I know that firsthand. Both Marty Kemp, my wife, and our First Lady, and I have both been in the situation before where we didn't think we were going to make it in our small business to the next Friday after barely getting through the one we were sitting home after on a Friday night back in Athens, Georgia. And that's a bad feeling when you can't pay your bills and you can't provide for your family. And I know that's how a lot of Georgians were feeling, and that's why I didn't waver. And we're better off for that. I think our country's better off for that too, Neil.
You know, we are told that any day now there are going to be indictments pending against the former president over his role in the Georgia recount that was going on. Obviously been a lot of Q&A back and forth with your Secretary of State, also easily reelected. Is that likely? Do you know if that's likely, and do you know what the impact will likely be?
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, you know, we'll see what the special grand jury does. I think it's pretty ridiculous, quite honestly, that it's taken this long to get to some sort of resolution, whatever that's going to be. But that's certainly something that I can't control. And just like all these indictments, at the end of the day, the jury and the judicial branch will decide those type things. But here again, I think that's a good reason for us to stay focused on what really matters going into the future when we're talking to voters that we're trying to get to help us win a presidential race.
All right, well, you did just that, and were easily reelected doing just that. So, Governor, it's always good seeing you. Thank you, sir.
Have a great day. Thanks, Neil.
You too. Governor Brian Kemp of the beautiful state of Georgia. In the meantime, I want you to take a look at the Chicago skyline right now.